Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome into the Traded Black podcast. Good to see you. It's been about 5 days since we're on last time, but good to have you all back. I'm your host, sdales. Lots to uncover. What did we miss for the last 5 days? Well, how about a $15.2 million fine involving one illegal cannabis operator within the state of New York? Is the state finally getting the hint, the word to clean this up? We talk about another bust, what happened in Brooklyn. And as well, we're also going to take a dive into Curaleaf International with their chief medical officer. Some big announcements regarding Curaleaf yesterday, as per a tweet put out by their chairman, Boris Jordan. So let's welcome in back to the live stream. Haven't seen you in a while, but good to see you, Anthony Varrell. Happy Wednesday.
How's it going?
I'm good. How was the long weekend?
It's good. It was good. Went to a wedding over on the other coast and then made it back here and had a relaxing Monday. It was a nice long weekend.
Yeah, that's for sure. Quick heads up, everyone. We're going to be actually interviewing the CEO of Canopy Growth, David Klein, tomorrow. We plan to release that on Friday morning. So a lot going on this week as well. Larry Scheffler from Planet 13 is actually be joining us. Last time we spoke to him was back at MJ Biz. Interesting, obviously, CEO to say the least, as they look to expand, as they are expanding in the Florida market. So a lot on the go as we gear up for the remainder of programming later this week. Okay, let's begin into the wire. Traded Black podcast here on a Wednesday, and we're going to start off things in New York. As I said off the top, there was obviously some pretty big news involving a hefty bill. Last Friday, New York Governor Hochul issued the biggest fine in New York State history, announcing a $15.2 million fine on an illegal cannabis operator that's operating 6 illicit cannabis shops. Anthony, maybe shit just got real in New York. Do you believe this is the, I guess, maybe turning point? Or am I reading too much into this for the state of New York? Because this
I'd like to think so. I mean, you're seeing reform. I mean, you're seeing them shut down illegal dispensaries in Manhattan, which I'm hearing firsthand accords of. However, that they're reoperating in 3 to 5 days. Right afterwards, they're taking the padlocks off and going back to business. I mean, that's not a net positive. I'm also not surprised to see that. I'd have to be willing that the black market and black market operations in New York are alive and well. New York is a very sophisticated black market. I'd probably guess that New York, California, and Florida are the 3 most sophisticated black markets in the country. It's probably where primarily most of the illegal cannabis in this country comes from. They're going to have a lot of work to do. And I mean, this is definitely a step in the right direction. But I mean, also, I might add that this fine that came down on Friday was also paired with the head of the New York OCM resigning once again due to pressure from Hochul.
What'd you make of that?
New York's a mess.
Yeah,
New York's a mess. Like I said a couple of months back, New York is great. New York is going to be great. New York is going to be a massive market. But wake me up when New York is relevant, which is probably a 2026 story. After they iron out all of the BS that they've went through, and after they finally get this right and retool their social equity program, get all these illegal dispensaries under control, and actually establish law and order in places like Manhattan. That's going to take a while. It's not going to be next month that New York gets it right.
Marcus Smith, I'm in agreement with you. $15 million ought to be enough to spread fear to illegal shop owners. I don't know how many people can afford $15 million and start operating again in 3 to 4 days, but that is a hefty fine that got headline news, which is badly needed. But there's still a lot of mess going on. But in combination, as we talk about, the $15.2 million fine, there was also a cannabis bust that took place in Brooklyn. Millions of dollars worth of illegal cannabis products stored in a Brooklyn warehouse are now in the possession of law enforcement. Local Fox affiliate reporter Michelle Ross said this is one of the biggest busts for the city. The sheriff's office also said this warehouse is one of the locations that restocks the bodegas and unlicensed smoke shops that aren't legally selling cannabis. So this, again, step in the right direction, Anthony. However, there's still a lot that needs to be answered. When you look at the legal market, there was a report earlier this month that basically outlined a lot of leaders lack transparency and actual proper leadership at kind of steering this legal market in the right direction. So there's a lot of things that these guys are going to have to answer as the days, weeks, and months start to mature. And we see a lot of these concerns regarding the black market start to be answered. But, the most important thing is that you got to have the right leaders for this to mature. And that's these busts and these heists and these fines don't necessarily answer that. But that's definitely a concern that a lot of people have brought to fruition as well pertaining to the state.
Yeah, I mean, the bust is a big deal because now you're affecting their supply chain. So, I mean, the
Yeah.
illegal dispensaries that are operating in places like Manhattan, Brooklyn, I mean, now they're going to lose out on their supply, but it's like a hydra. You cut one head off and two more grow. It's probably going to keep happening. I mean, sure, one bust is great, but there's no way they're going to be able to clamp down on the entire black market infrastructure that's sitting in New York right now. That's supplying all of those stores. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen anytime
Yeah.
soon.
What'd you say last week? 22,000 comments was your guess?
22,000 was my guess.
All right.
I think we're up to about 7,500.
7.56K public comments. I've got a ways to go. It's 78,141, but see where it ends up, to say the least. Wolfie,
Yeah.
Jason Spatafora. What's up, dude? Good to see you, my friend. Lots going on, to say the least. Last thing I want to bring up here and into the wire is involving Ohio, which we all know last year became the 24th state in the country to legalize adult use cannabis for non-medical purposes. There was also news earlier this month involving news laws that laid out for what the state is referring to as a non-cannabis licensure that requires applications be made available as soon as next week, June the 7th. Based off of that, recreational rules went into effect yesterday. So what can residents then expect now that the rules have taken place when visiting a dispensary within the state? Do you know much about this?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to see a potential rollout as early as July 1st for full recreational cannabis. I mean, the operators that are currently there are going to have the opportunity to colo rec in their med dispensaries that are there right now. There's going to be incremental dispensaries allotted. I think each MSO or each operator was capped at 5. They're now going to be able to have 3 more incremental dispensaries. And I mean, going through Pablo's report last night, he expects the market to 4x in year 1. That's pretty aggressive, I think, but it's due to the underserved medical market and just the overall demand that you're going to see from an adult use conversion. Just doing back of the napkin math, and I'm only using Verano because they're one of the only operators that actually extrapolates their numbers. I mean, they would potentially go from 5 million to 20 million a quarter in Ohio if you're going to go 4x number, which puts $60 million incrementally into their top line.
Yeah.
Don't kill me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's about 7 or 8% top line growth for them. That ain't bad. All things
in one
considered.
state.
He cited companies such as the Cannabis, Ascend Wellness, and Vexed to have the most upside potential from a market cap perspective. And I mean, his report that he came out with Ohio last night was actually pretty solid. I know that some people like to, look at his numbers and prod and poke around, but I mean, the report that he put out was pretty solid. I mean, we're going to go through it next week with Anthony Caniglio and do a deep dive video into the Ohio market. So I would definitely look out for that later next week to early the week after.
Ron1219, hey fellas, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for logging on. Anybody, leave some comments below. As Anthony said, we're deep diving into the state of Ohio. Any specific topics regarding market size, anything related to that, who benefits, what companies? Those are obvious, topics that we'll cover. Anything else you want us to do a deep dive in Ohio, let us know in the comments section below as well. Make sure to smash that like button if you haven't done so already. Please subscribe to the TDR YouTube channel. Do you want to touch on John Morgan right now? Or do you want to wait until after the featured interview?
Let's do it after. We can do that in the outro.
All right, that wraps up Into the Wire here on the Trade to Black Wednesday. Good to see you all. I'm your host, sdales, along with TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Now time for a featured guest in today's podcast. Yesterday, Curaleaf Chairman Boris Jordan, he announced that the company is pleased to be part of a new initiative that will establish the UK as a leader in cannabis research and development, which will be a comprehensive strategy put in place to improve both the scientific outcomes and availability of medical cannabis for patients. So what does this fully entail? Let's welcome in Curaleaf's Chief Medical Officer, Doctor Mikael Sodergren. Nice to see you and welcome to the Trade to Black podcast. How are things?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Very well, thank you.
You are based in London, UK. Are we getting some sun in London? Or are we still dealing with rain?
No sun for the last 3 months, but we'll see. Hopefully in a couple of months, we'll see a little bit.
Have you been traveling? You look tanned.
Yeah, no, that's just my filter.
That's hilarious. 3 months and no sun in the UK. Wow.
Barely any here.
Well, let's begin. Your company, Curaleaf International, announced yesterday an official partnership with the groundbreaking task force that's aimed at positioning the UK as a global leader in the cannabis and cannabinoid research. Some very notable names are involved in this initiative that include George Freeman, MP, Professor Trevor Jones, along with the NHS, which is huge, to advance the overall understanding of cannabis. So, first question: why is this initiative important, and really, how was it put all together?
Yeah, this is something that we're really excited about. The initiative is essentially a research strategy group, and as you said, it's co-chaired by two very eminent people in the life sciences field. One of whom was the Minister of State for Science and Technology until just a few months ago. So was the person who was implementing these strategies from the government. Of course, as you may know, we've just had the announcement that we've got an election that's been called. So we're going to have a new government in the beginning of July. And that's very timely for this, because this research strategy group is going to publish its first set of recommendations in July that'll be fresh to the new government, and which is hopefully going to allow them to implement some relatively basic changes to unleash the full potential of the cannabinoid sector in the UK.
Interesting.
And hopefully more widely. And why is that important for Curaleaf? Well, Curaleaf is one of 7 invited industry partners to this initiative, and we're the only vertically integrated company. The rest are essentially biotech companies or similar. And we've always taken a very, very different approach to our peers when it comes to research and development in the medical space. And we've always been extremely science-led, data-driven. And I'll give you perhaps a couple of examples of that. One of which is, just how we focus on developing products in Europe. And so our biggest group of patients here in Europe are, in fact, globally, are chronic pain patients in the medical space, about 50%. And so we looked at this and we thought, how do we develop the best medicine for those patients? And at the moment, what most companies are doing is they're extracting cannabis oils from various different cultivars and strains, and essentially just trying what works best. And that's not really how you should approach this. And so what we've done is, over the last 4 or 5 years, if not more, we've gone back to basics and we've gone into the lab. We've tested individual cannabinoids, looked at individual cannabinoids in combination with others. We've published widely on this, looked at terpenes and all the individual constituents of the plant. And we've seen recently that in a neuropathic pain model in a petri dish, so in vitro, we have come up with a combination of cannabinoids and terpenes, which essentially obliterates a pain signal.
Wow.
So that is in very stark contrast to just extracting a tincture, say, from the plant. And this is something that we're just filing IP on this week or next, and that we're going to have commercialized for UK patients in June. So we've always taken this very research-driven and science-driven approach. And so this is something that we think is going to benefit us immensely.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're quite an accomplished surgeon. I mean, you have a laundry list of accolades. You're on editorial boards for medical journals. You have a patented, internationally renowned medical device. What drew you into cannabis? Like, at what point did you decide, I want to go into cannabinoid research versus traditional medicine?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, well, the first answer, which is the easiest, is that, as a surgeon, I unfortunately cause a lot of pain, and we don't have good methods to treat that. But actually, more important than that is that I thought many years ago that this would represent one of the most interesting academic projects, because before we legalized medical cannabis here in the UK, we'd seen what happened in Canada and elsewhere. And what that meant was that we were going to have the opportunity to develop medicines and then take those before going through these costly clinical trials that lead to market authorization, FDA approval, and treat patients with them. And so what we did was we set up what we called Sapphire Medical Clinics, and which is now Curaleaf Clinics, which was the first medical cannabis clinic in the UK. And what from the first patient onwards, we've collected a comprehensive set of clinical outcome data, adverse events in the same way as we do for phase 1 trials. And so we can now take medicines that we develop like we've done that I just described, treat our patients in the clinic, gather that data as a feedback loop, and be able to improve them without doing these trials. And that opportunity has never arisen in medicine during my career before. And so I was very excited about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to say, like, the NHS to get involved too, that is a big component as well. But, I think there's a lot, like, we've had a few interviews as well related to, the whole cannabinoid research. We had a company on last week pertaining to Alzheimer's. I think it's still in the early stages, but, like, to Anthony's point, like, how'd you get involved in this with this new government in place? And are they involved? Are they not involved, but are they for cannabis? Are they for research? Like, how do you progress this knowing that this is an industry that basically rescheduled cannabis, 6 years ago? The growth of it all has been relatively slow, but with this initiative and a lot of the misconceptions about what cannabis is in the past versus what it is today, how do you see this fast tracking?
Yeah, let's be clear. I think the reason that it's been slow in the UK has been public awareness. We did a survey not very long ago, a year or so ago, where and this was a representative sample of the population, over 10,000 people, only 50% knew that medical cannabis was legal, and this was 4 or 5 year after legalization. So I think that's been the
only
biggest
10%.
Barrier.
Wow.
50%, yeah, half 50%. The population.
Oh, 50. Sorry, apologies.
50%. So when that changes, you're going to see some, that's obviously going to be very important. But more to the point of this research strategy group, whilst there have been a rescheduling, there are anomalies which shouldn't exist. For instance, research permits sit with the Home Office rather than the Department of Health, who don't know how to deal with research questions, etc. Things like that, which can very easily be fixed. And that's why we're so positive that we could get some really interesting and pretty quick results from this group, because a lot of the things that need to be done don't require legislation. And an incoming government would be perfectly well capable of implementing those.
With the UK rescheduling in 2018, the US potentially rescheduling here, let's say within the next year, we'll call it, which is hopefully wishful thinking. Do you see investment dollars starting to really fly into the cannabinoid research part of, or the cannabinoid research space in medicine? And research starting to get fast tracked? Because I know we saw Epidiolex from GW in 2018. I think that was the last commercialized application for synthetic cannabinoids. Do you see that really just starting to get catalyzed across the board as we see reform start to come in larger countries?
Yeah, that's an interesting and the backdrop to the research group that we were just talking about is that the UK has quite a rich history of this. GW is a UK company, and, which has produced 2 out of the only 3 licensed cannabinoid medicines. But bear in mind, they did that before rescheduling happened in the UK.
Yeah, they did.
All of their R&D was done before. So, it can be done. But what I can say is that with rescheduling and making research more accessible and easier to undertake, you're clearly going to get more interest in trials. Trials going to be easier to run, etc. And so there's undoubtedly more interest going to be, highlighting more traditional pharmaceutical research for sure.
Okay. And the studies that you're conducting right now, are you using synthetically derived cannabinoids? Are they naturally occurring cannabinoids? And how do you really see that dichotomy playing out in the future of medicine that could be derived from cannabis?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And some of we published a lot of this, but just to be very brief, I could talk for a long time on it. But some of the things that we have shown is that when you use naturally derived cannabinoids and compared them to synthetic ones, you sometimes get a better effect in preclinical models. And that's not because of the cannabinoid themselves. That's because of the synergy with what you get when you extract. So, for instance, some terpenes. What we've shown is that terpenes, the way that they work as pain-killing medicines, are through a different receptor to that of the major cannabinoids. And that's how this entourage effect actually works, because two different mechanisms mean that they have a more than a synergistic effect.
Where do you see this, I guess, industry going as far as like research? Like if you had to like bring up the topic of cannabinoids, in 5 years from now, like, do you see this becoming like a mainstream topic of conversation when it comes to medicine, not only in the UK, but across Europe?
Yeah, I do. But I think that more importantly than that, our philosophy at Curaleaf International is that at the moment we're in the business of manufacturing unlicensed medicine. And of course, to be the best in that sector, you have to not just have the biggest footprint and have everything in place like we do, but you have to have the best medicines, right?
Right.
And to be able to do that, you need R&D. But at the same time, there's undoubtedly, like we've seen in the US, there's going to be further legalization of adult use around Europe. When, no one knows, but it's sort of undoubted, and it makes sense for us to be able to understand the products in more detail. A lot of the consumers in the adult use markets use cannabis for like medical reason, like to fall asleep or to treat pain or something like that. And so we want to be able to understand the products in greater depth. And the only way to do that is data-driven decision-making, proper research and development.
Do you foresee cannabinoids being a large part of, I guess, the makeup of medicines moving forward? I mean, I feel like we're just at the tip of the spear with what we're seeing that cannabinoids can actually do. I mean, when we were talking to someone last week, it was mostly because cannabinoids can actually puncture the blood-brain barrier, which makes them, I guess, efficacious in treating certain therapies. Do you really see them as being an emphasis being on them as far as the future of medicine?
I think that they have a really important role to play. And the reason for that is that the endocannabinoid system is present in every part of the body. And as a result, what we're seeing is that we can treat a whole range of different diseases with these cannabinoid compounds. And so, in the clinic that we have in the UK now, I think we treat 16 different conditions. And a lot of them, we have some RCT evidence or really high quality real world evidence to suggest that there's a good signal there, that they're safe, etc. And I think that once we understand the medicines more, we're going to make them even better. Like my example just now was, right now we're throwing a very blunt sword at the problem, but we're going to be able to throw a very sharp spear once we understand what it is in these, compounds that help in disease.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we talk about like the entourage effect, like certain people talk about breaking down like the terpenes, how they interact with certain parts of the cannabinoid system on a person by person basis differently. I mean, do you see like AI or machine learning kind of coming in and really catalyzing that as more so like personalized medicine as it relates to cannabinoids in the future?
100%. And it's funny that you brought this up, because only a few weeks ago we started a big machine learning project. So now we have clinical outcome data on about 25,000 comprehensive 25,000 patients. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put that through some machine learning algorithms to understand a few things. Number one is, how are these products actually clustered, and how do we categorize them? There's day and night strains, indica, sativa. That's probably not the right way to do it. And so we don't know that. The second thing is, who's actually going to benefit from these medicines? We know that some people benefit a lot, some people less so. And what is it that makes this different? What is it that makes a difference between those who have a side effect and those who don't have a side effect?
Right.
And this is exactly what we'll be able to cluster and profile using these machine learning algorithms. So we should have all that data available by the end of the summer. And I think it'll be really, really interesting just to take a deep dive into not just what the products are, but what the characteristics are of patients that actually benefit from them.
Absolutely. Because I mean, just as an anecdotal statement, I mean, you see so many people, they're like, oh, this affects me this way. It affects another person completely differently. So, I mean, to be able to take a targeted, more like personalized approach, I could see that just doing light years as far as progress goes.
100%.
For cannabinoid medicine.
100%. And then, of course, once we understand that, we just need a biomarker. So what is it that makes you susceptible to this medicine for the treatment of pain? And then we're going to, then we're really in the realm of personalized medicine.
When you're dealing with the current landscape of chronic pain in the UK, like there's a lot of opioid addiction that takes place in North America. Do you see the same thing in the UK?
We don't have as big a problem with the opioid crisis, i.e., the deaths, because I think that we don't have the same misuse of fentanyl and similar. But we do have an opioid problem that doesn't necessarily result in as much death, but it's a similar problem. It takes people off work. It causes a lot of harm, and so there are opioid reduction strategies, being directed from central government in a lot of European countries in the same way as in the United States, of course. And what we're really hoping to understand is what role medical cannabis has to play within those strategies.
All the more reason to launch this initiative, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. People want change. That's for sure. One of the people reached out to us and said, you wonder if Big Pharma eventually gets involved. They already have got involved, obviously, with Jazz Pharmaceuticals and GW Pharmaceuticals. But I can't help but think, we're at a time where we're at a pivotal point, I think, in, as far as medicine and just the way people want different alternatives. But do you believe we're at that point based on the conversations that you've had and the feedback that you've received?
Yeah, I mean, big pharma, they have got involved with GW and Jazz, but that is for a very narrow indication. Pretty much as narrow as you can get. And so of course they're interested. I think big pharma have had issues around IP in this space, not really understanding how to protect their investment, the inevitable investment that they would have to make to have licensed medicine. But I can tell you that once we generate data that, compelling data that shows that we have a proprietary compound that treats neuropathic pain in a way that an opioid doesn't, there's going to be a lot of interest. And I don't think we're far away from that, if I'm being completely honest.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess one more question I have. What's the biggest, how are your peers as it relates to cannabinoid research and cannabis becoming, I don't want to say mainstream medicine, but starting to really get its way into doctors actually prescribing it? Like, are they for it? Are they against it? Do they kind of scoff at it at first when they hear about cannabinoids, or what's the general sentiment?
Now I think there is, I can't remember the last time any of my colleagues didn't acknowledge that it was a legitimate medicine. And the stigma is, I think here in the UK, is long gone. In other countries in Europe, there are various levels of stigma, I would imagine, but here in the UK, I think it's pretty much non-existent now.
Last thing I'll ask is, how did you and Mr. Boris Jordan meet?
We met when he came over to Europe to talk about this exciting opportunity that there was here. It seems like a long time ago for me, but quite a few years ago.
Yeah. Good guy, to say the least. Well, listen, appreciate the update, appreciate the information, but a lot of our viewers just listening here today got some great insight on it. So that's the biggest takeaway that we want out of this podcast. We all want to learn about education and where this is going, but congrats, obviously, on the initiative, and most importantly, best of luck moving forward.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for Dr.
Sodergren. Look forward to having you back.
Well, that was an interesting interview, to say the least. The Dank Informer writes, simply look at the qualifying medical conditions of each U.S. state that has legalized cannabis. The opportunity is enormous. Well said. Well said.
Yep. Not saying pills don't work, but there's plenty of plant alternatives that are on their way and working for people.
We're at a turning point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they can leverage cannabinoids for neuropathic pain, you don't have to use opioids or any of those substances anymore that ravage the body with long-term use. I mean, it'll be a huge net positive.
It's funny what we've learned over the last 7 days related to cannabinoids, with Eric Adams from InMed Pharmaceuticals and some of the stuff that they were doing related to a glaucoma. And little did they find out that it was providing some eye-opening, I don't want to say breakthrough research, because that's not where I'm going, but it's definitely garnered some interest amongst the medical community related to Alzheimer's. So if none of you have gotten a chance to review that video that we did with Eric Adams from InMed last week. You may want to check that out because it's another positive sign in the right direction for cannabinoids and just the overall interest level pertaining to research. So, yeah, we'll see, right?
Yeah, It was a great interview with him last week.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap things up. Let's now focus on Florida. Attorney John Morgan. I know there's some things that you wanted to address because he's been a rather big component, to say the least, as far as the overall growth of cannabis within that state. There's a few things that you wanted to bring up that I think are important for our viewers to learn.
John Morgan was big. I mean, John Morgan put, I think, $8 million of his own money into campaigning for medical marijuana to get passed in the state of Florida.
8 million of his own money?
8 million of his own dollars.
Wow.
He then put, I think, $6 million of his own dollars into an amendment to the Florida Constitution as it relates to minimum wage. John Morgan's a very powerful attorney in Florida. John Morgan's a very powerful member of the Democratic Party in the state of Florida. John Morgan's a megaphone that just got activated for Smart and Safe. He's a great person to have on our side. I was wondering when he was going to get involved in the fight. He gave a very sensible speech this morning on the main argument that as it relates to what's going to happen to the roads, how are drivers not going to be safe if you do enact adult use cannabis in the state of Florida. And he simply said, okay, if you're going to do that, then you should go ban all alcohol and beer in the state as well, because the dangers to driving are just as far reaching through alcohol as they are on cannabis. And we trust adults in the state of Florida above the age of 21 to be able to purchase alcohol and then be able to responsibly use alcohol and not drive. And you know what happens if they get caught? They go to jail. There's a very large fine, and there are ramifications for that. So adults in the state of Florida should be able to consume adult use cannabis.
Yes.
And if they choose to operate a motor vehicle, they will suffer the consequences. But at the same time, adult use cannabis is not going to make everybody start smoking weed and driving cars everywhere. The usage rates don't go up with adult use initiatives enacted. That's what people don't seem to get. But John had a very, very well-informed speech today, and it was just one of many I think we're going to see on the horizon here.
You become a product of like your own environment where you get these stupid questions and like concerns, like recreational federally legalized cannabis across Canada has been legalized for 6 years in the fall, 6 years. And again, I keep saying this, no one talks about it. People in a lot of ways forget about it. And you don't hear about people getting pulled over, being stoned and getting into reckless car accidents anywhere. I've never even heard of it. But it's just crazy how a topic, I think in the beginning stages, people think, well, is everyone going to turn into like stoners? And I'm just like, the response to that is, how many clinics are across the rehab clinics or across North America for people with alcohol problems? There's tons. But I'm not saying that that's the case. But, yes, we're focusing on adult use, but in a medically approved state already, in addition to everything we're talking about adult use, there's also some medical benefits. And if you don't believe me, then go ask a lot of military veterans and what they think. But, great to see him with that video.
It's access to safe, tested, regulated product. I mean, that's it at the end of the day. People that are going to smoke weed are already smoking weed. You're just giving them a much safer, consistent access point that, oh, by the way, you can now tax and make money off of.
And we've had Kim on a few times. Hashtag yes on 3 if you want to donate money. Marcus Smith, yes, $20 to Smart and Safe. So anybody that's out there, look, you contribute to this initiative. It'd be a big one, because at the end of the day, whether you live in Florida or not, if this passes, this is going to benefit, I think, everybody involved for the better of this cannabis space, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is going to get passed. I mean, what I want to see is John Morgan debate Ron DeSantis. John Morgan could run. He's not going to, I don't think. But if John Morgan wanted to, he could run for governor and probably win.
You'd like to see him debate? So, debate on that would be amazing.
Cannabis?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got to get him on. We've got to get him on. The Dank Informer, everyone that wants to use cannabis on a regular basis is already doing so. We need safer products through legalization and decriminalization. Yep.
Correct.
Another agreement.
Yeah.
Dank Informer's got his head on straight. That's for sure. Island Breeze writes, Pot Daddy. Christopher Brady.
They were calling him. They were actually calling him the Pot Daddy when they were running medical in the campaign.
Every time John Morgan says the F word in that video, take a shot. Christopher Brady.
Oh, John's great. John's unfiltered. John says it how it is. But he is a big Floridian to have in our corner.
Yeah.
As it relates to 3.
Emily Paxia, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks again last week for jumping on with you and Josh and Jason Wow. That was a great interview. If you guys haven't done so already, I've alerted to the David Boyce lawsuit. Make sure to check out our live stream from last week. All right. We got Larry Scheffler tomorrow, along with David Klein from Canopy Growth. What's that?
I keep thinking Scotty. Every time you say Larry, I think of Scotty Scheffler. Which the police comments around his arrest this morning were
the world is watching at all angles. There was a camera on a telephone pole that caught all that footage. Like I was honestly, when I first heard this, I thought cop power trip, but I said shouldn't be quick to judge. But 48 hours later, all charges dropped, and you basically saw what went down. And I'm just like, I don't know. The world's #1 golfer, I don't think is going to risk going into a golf tournament to do something stupid, especially after somebody who tragically passed away, which was awful news. But it seemed like there was a lot more to this story than what was being relayed to a lot of the audience. But sure enough, there's a camera propped up on a telephone pole, and bam.
The cop got what was coming to him.
He got reprimanded. As usual, look, we launched our latest research report. We're launching actually 6 research reports of the 6 biggest companies in the space. We launched Trulieve earlier this week. So if you want to have access to that research report, log on to thedalesreport.com and subscribe to our baked in newsletter. Some good comparables and some good takeaways from this research report by our professor, analyst, lead financial writer, Bill McNarland. We're going to have him on Friday and the next couple of Fridays to outline the latest reports. But we've got Trulieve, GTI. What was a couple other companies that you recommended that he should do research on?
It's Trulieve, GTI, Verano, Glasshouse, Cresco, and there's one more.
So some big ones. So the big MSOs.
Yeah. Oh, Curaleaf.
Simplified information for the everyday retail investor to basically consume. You don't get access to this information unless you're an institution working on Wall Street or Bay Street. So we're providing this information for you, the viewer. So again, make sure to log on to thedalesreport.com and subscribe to our baked in newsletter as well. Smash that like button, leave lots of comments below. We're doing a deep dive on Ohio. So if there's anything related to Ohio that you want to learn more of, when I go live with basically me and the Anthonys, Anthony Varrell and Anthony Cogniglio, we can bring some of those questions up that you have pertaining to Ohio. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Mr. Varrell, I'll see you tomorrow. And we might be back here Friday morning with Boris Jordan. We'll let all of you know either way. If we do go live with Boris on Friday morning, it's actually going to be 9 a.m., not 11 a.m. on Friday. But either way, we'll let you know on our community page and through Twitter. So stay connected. Make sure to share this video with your network and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.